On page 119, point to example 4. There's a reason we're going to go through this, because in example 4, the book skips a step, and I find it annoying. Okay? We are now today going to add and subtract. We're going to add and subtract. Well, when I have numbers like this, if I have like 179.4 plus 6.89, what do I have to remember to do before I can add those numbers? You have to do what? How do I add them? Do I do like 1 and 6 and 7 and 8 and 9 and 9? Is that what I do? No, what do I have to do to add those two numbers together? Line up what? Line up the... You have to line up the decimals so that the ones are added to the ones place, and the tenths are added to the tenths, and the hundredths are added to the hundredths. What if there's nothing above that number? What do I do there? You add a 0. Today it's the same thing. You have to line up the decimals with our scientific notation. If you don't, you get the wrong answer. What if I did this? What if I had like 17.8 take away 0.479? What do I have to do before I can subtract those two numbers? You have to do what? And do what? Ooh, but you didn't tell me your first step. You have to line up the decimals. So my tenths is taken away from my tenths. And then if I don't have anything, I would have to add those places in. It's the same idea today. We're going to line up our decimals, but with scientific notation, if it says times 10 to the 4th, that means there's 4 decimal places. If it says times 10 to the 8th, that means it's 8 decimal places, and we have to make sure they're lined up. So when you're looking at example 4, point to it. It says 6.89 times 10 to the 4th plus 9.24 times 10 to the 5th. Are those going to be lined up? If I have 4 places here and 5 places here? No. And so we have to make sure our decimals get lined up first. Take a look at the red part in your book. Take a look at the red part in your book right here. We're going to change this number right here so that it has an exponent of 4. Some of you are not looking in your book because you're looking at my book. That's why. This part skips its step, and I find it annoying because what they're doing is they're saying, well, I'm going to make this 10 to the 4th so that they'll be the same. But there's 5 tens, right? You can't lose that 10, so really they're moving this 10 over to this number right here so that do you see how there's still 5 tens? I've got 1 here and 4 here. There's still 5 tens. You can't change the value. But what's this? What's 9.24 times 10? No, times just 10. 92, I move it 1 place. So that's how they got that 92.4. Okay? They didn't write this step down, and I find that annoying because some people are like, where'd the other 10 go? They multiplied it onto this number. It's still the same. This is still the same value. It's just not in scientific notation anymore. Do you see that step? What questions do you have? It starts in scientific notation, and then they change it out of scientific notation, but it has the same value. That's important. I'm with you, Mrs. Smith. Now, what's going to happen is they're going to use the distributive property, and that means if I have the same factor, I can pull it out. We're saying now I have 4 places that are already lined up. So they're going to move that to the outside and put their just straight up numbers next to each other. So this right here is the distributive property. I promise you're going to run into that a ton this year and as freshman and sophomore. You have to know that means I'm pulling out the same factor. And I have 6.89 plus 92.4. Well, what do I have to do with those two numbers before I can add them together? I have to do what?
You have to
line up the decimals. So this part right here helped us line up the 4 place values. That's the exponent. This part, you still have to line up the decimals. What questions do you have? This is forcing you to think about exponents and decimal places and the distributive property all at the same time. So if you're missing any one of those links, this part gets hard. For real, you guys are good. No questions on this part. So when I add those together, the book says it's 99.29 times 10 to the 4th. Because I still have that factor. Am I done? No, what do I have to do? Is this in scientific notation?
No, you have to make it less than 10 and no lower than 1.
I do, which means I'm going to move the decimal this way, which means what? That I'm dividing by
1.
If I move it a decimal place, I'm dividing. So this is really 9.929 times 10, right? I took a 10 out of this number. Do you see this? The book skipped this step as well. So the book skipped that step, and the book is skipping this step, and I find it annoying. Because how many 10s are there? If I take a 10 out of that number to make it scientific notation, I have 10 here, or 1 here, and 4 here. How many 10s do I really have? I have 4 here, and I have 1 more. How many do I have? So my answer is 9.929 times 10 to the 5th. I can't do it by myself. I can see where those numbers came from, is where I need you to be right now. Can you follow where the numbers came from?
Yeah.
What questions do you have? Ask me your questions. For real?
We're going to have to do 29 through 37 now.
Not quite yet. So now I want you to look at, right here, look at the subtraction one. It says times 10 to the 8th times 10 to the 7th. It's a subtraction problem. They're going to change this one. You always change the bigger one. Okay? We want it to have what exponent? We want it to have a, if this is 8 and this is a 7, the exponents have to be the same to line them up. Okay? So if I have, this is example 5, if I have 7.83 times 10 to the 8th, take away 1.161 times 10 to the 7th, what am I trying to do? I want to do what with my exponents? I want them to be, the exponents need to be the same. So I want it to be 10 to the 7th. Well, hold on, I have 8 of them. So what do I got to do? You have to move 1 to the other number. I still have 8 tens. You see I still have 8 tens? I have 7 here and 1 more here.
Yeah.
What's 7.83 times 10? Good, it's 78.3 times 10 to the 7th. Take away 1.161 times 10 to the 7th. What questions do you have? The book skipped this step. I discovered some 8th graders, by the end of the hour, were able to skip this step. I want you to do that step to start. I am annoyed that the book doesn't do it because it doesn't show you where that 10 went. They moved it to this other number. You guys have it for real? This part's the tricky part. You got it? What questions do you have? What do I do next? Look at the example in the book. What do I do next? So our line looks just like their line now. What are you going to do? Ooh, what property are we going to use? We're going to pull that 10 to the 7th out, that factor out, because it's the same, so we can only deal with the numbers. You guys said that yesterday with the cards, right? We're just going to do the front numbers. We're doing the front numbers again, but we're using the distributive property. You need to know the name. So the whole thing is times 10 to the 7th. We have 7 decimal places lined up right now. We have 78.3, take away 1.161. What do I have to do with those numbers? Yes, Olivia, you're going to do what? Line up the decimals. I get 77.139 times 10 to the 7th. Am I done? Am I done? No, what do I have to do? Well, that means I'm going to divide by what number? 7.7139 times 10. This is the part that the book skips, times 10 to the 7th. So really, I have how many tens? I have 8 tens. That's my answer. You did not have to write that down.